computer. There we go. Actually, I'm going to stop.
Actual new and improved, supposedly, contract that's now no longer 10 pages, it's now 11 pages. Let's see if we can get it up to 15. Okay, let's see. I can close a little bit of this off. All right. So anyway, the changes, I thought I'd just go over a few of the changes for the current contract so that the ones that just came for that can go ahead and go on. If they need to leave, they can do that. But I just found these little cliff notes of what's changed, and so I have a list of those. Have y'all seen I call them the cliff notes, changes to the 1 to 4 contract?
No,
Yes.
was that in the email?
That was in the packet if you registered for it.
Oh, okay. I probably registered a little too late.
Okay.
I registered last night. Okay.
Okay. So I'm going to show you the contract here. Some of you have this and some of you won't, but that's okay because I sent out a bunch last night. Okay. So the first change of the contract is going to be the major thing. There's some little things like this property up here, like who cares that they changed how it looks or whatever. That's just cosmetic. And anything that they scratched through in red, that means it's gone. Anything that's blue is something they added. So we have the first major thing is 2C. 2C is the definition of controls was updated to include software and applications used to access and control accessories, along with dedicated hardware solely used for the accessory. See if I can read it a little bit better. It's not easy to read there. Let me find my. So basically what it's saying is security systems that are not fixtures and controls for garage doors, entry gates, and other improvements and accessories. Controls includes sellers' transferable rights to the 1, software and applications used to access and control improvements or accessories, and 2, hardware used solely to control improvements or accessories. That sounds like a lot of legalese talk that they must have gotten paid by the word or something. Basically, they're talking about smart products and things that we have use in our house and all. And I found out an interesting thing, that if someone has a Ring doorbell, that is not considered necessarily a stationary item. If it could be hardwired in, but you can also just use batteries for it and put it at your front door, and it's not permanent. So if you see something like a Ring or something like that doorbell security item, if you want that, be sure that you ask for that. Don't assume that it's going to be going with it, because there are different circumstances. Okay. The next major change, where they added a whole big old bunch of it about leases. They wanted to make sure that this paragraph now contains lease information, including references to the new residential and fixture lease addenda. There's a new addenda for that, as well as information on natural resource leases to which seller is a party. That's still legalese talk, saying they put everything you can imagine about existing leases and fixture leases to put that in the contract. I think mainly between that and the earnest money and termination option, that's the biggest change in this contract. And of course, the next one is the biggie in paragraph 5 about earnest money and termination option. And basically, the revised section combines payment of earnest money and termination option in a single provision and calls for payment of the termination option to go to the escrow agent rather than the other agent or the seller, which is completely new. Now, what's interesting about this is it says now delivery of earnest money and option fee. And by the way, they can make one check for this now if they want to. Delivery of earnest money and option fee within 3 days after the effective date. Buyer must deliver to blank, whatever title company, at whatever address, as earnest money and blank as option fee. The earnest money and option fee shall be made payable to escrow agent. It's made payable to the title and may be paid separately or combined in a single payment. And it says buyers shall deliver additional earnest money. That's if there was some additional that was required, but you don't typically have anything in there. And another biggie is if the last day to deliver the earnest money, option fee, or the additional earnest money falls on a Saturday, Sunday, or legal holiday, the time to deliver the earnest money, option fee, or the additional earnest money is extended until the end of the next day that is not a Saturday, Sunday, or legal holiday. Isn't that different? So we used to say 3 business days for earnest money and 3 calendar days for option. It's now they're delivered the same date, depending on if it's a Saturday, Sunday, or holiday. So that was different. And it just goes through about the termination option and how many days they have for it to be in effect. And I wanted to have my new program all about, I wanted to have a new handout for you on this one to cover today. And then I couldn't find one that didn't say draft across everything. So I said, okay, this isn't going to work. And by the way, this contract and all the other contracts that they revised, which is all of them, will not take effect until February 16th of 2021. So they gave us a real early start to look at it, but they don't expect anybody to be using it until at least February, when maybe by February 15th, they'll have them put up on their website.
Alice,
Yes.
in paragraph B, is
Who
that
is
where
this?
option period would go right there?
Who is speaking?
This is Joe.
Oh, Joe.
Joe.
Yeah, Joe.
Paragraph B, is that where the option period would go? The date before days on the
And then within blank days, you'd have 7B. That would be 7, 10,
okay.
30, whatever you can think of. That's where that would go.
And Alice, this is Cindy.
Yes, Cindy.
Just to confirm back, so you're saying that the earnest money and option money are both 3 calendar days now?
No, I'm not saying 3 calendar days.
Okay.
They're
Okay.
3 days, but if it lands on a Saturday, Sunday, or a holiday on the following Monday or something, then it goes to the additional a day later.
Okay, so they're not really functioning like business days, or
It's business days,
it's
basically,
business days.
or
Okay.
not a holiday.
Okay.
So that's different. And that's what you have to tell your people to get it there timely. Failure to timely deliver earnest money. If buyer fails to deliver the earnest money within the time required, seller may terminate this contract or exercise remedies under paragraph 15 or both. So failure to timely deliver option fee. If no dollar amount is stated in the option fee, or if buyer fails to deliver the option fee within the time required, buyer shall not have the unrestricted right to terminate this contract, which that's no different. And it just says time is of the essence. And there's a little bit paragraph that used to be in there for this, and they've got all of that in there now. So that's paragraph 5. The next one that's really of any consequence is paragraph 8. Paragraph 8, we're getting there, is about brokers and sales agents disclosure. That used to be in paragraph 4. They did away with it on 4 and put it over here separate. And basically it's just saying the previously proposed version removed the language stating the broker's fees or obligations. This language was added back in. So it's saying, they're saying brokers or sale agents who own more than 10% or in a trust or the seller or the buyer must disclose this in this paragraph 8. And they must notify the other party in writing before entering into a contract or sale. So disclosed if applicable. And that's where you would put your name if you were one of the sellers, one of the buyers, or if your immediate family member was one of the sellers or the buyers. And then broker's fees, that used to be in another section, and it's just saying that all obligations of the parties for payment are contained in separate written agreements. We all know that. That's called listing agreements that aren't a part of this. So they just kind of changed that up a little bit. And I think they just have those Mercedes payments they've got to make. So they changed up a little bit more. Let's see, what else? Paragraph 10, possession. That's what we feel like some clients are, possessed. Okay. Possession. This is talking about smart, that doesn't sound right. A smart devices is about, yes, it does add smart devices. This paragraph 10, a smart devices section was added to clarify that those devices get transferred with the sale of the property. So under 10, you have buyer's possession is A, B is about leases, and they took all that out because they put that other big section about leases. And here's where they added about smart devices. Smart devices means a device that connects to the internet to enable remote use, monitoring, and management of the property, items identified in any non-realty item addendum, or items in a fixture lease assigned to buyer. At the time seller delivers possession of the property to buyer, seller shall, 1, deliver to buyer written information containing all access codes, usernames, passwords, and applications buyer will need to access, operate, manage, and control the smart devices. Now, I think more questions are going to come up about that part, because if you're saying that you have an Alexa, that is not a permanent fixture. That is something you can plug and play and can move. So I think some of those things it's going to open up more of a can of worms. It also says can terminate and remove all access and connections to the improvements and accessories from any of seller's personal devices, including but not limited to phones and computers. So I think that's really nebulous what they put there, and I think there's going to be more questions, and I wouldn't be surprised if they don't make another change the next revision, probably in a year or so. I definitely think. You know, some special, yes.
Oh, this is Cindy again.
Yes, Cindy.
I notice, when you always recommend that if the seller wants anything, that they just remove that off the table. But
Yeah.
A lot of times people leave their smart equipment, maybe their Arlo camera, the wire-free cameras, their Ring doorbell, because they kind of want to see what's going on the property.
Yes.
So is this saying like that they if it's there when the place is listed, it has to convey with the sale?
It puts the problem back on the sellers, that if those items are not conveying, then they need to put in this contract up there where the items that are not conveying, the Ring doorbell will not convey, the Alexa, whatever it is, I don't know what exactly else it could be. If it's not hardwired in, then I would still.
I don't know that.
Another item that may come into play on this is thermostat.
Thermostat, oh yeah. Nest
Some of
thermostat.
these thermostats now are very smart.
Yes, we've got one of them. In fact, ALE.
I have one of them too, because I had to change the air conditioner, and so that came with it, and then obviously to match up, I had to change too, because I have 2 ACs.
Yeah, so if you don't want to leave that Nest thermostat, you need to put the old original thermostat back on there and not let somebody get to begin with.
Okay.
Go ahead. Okay.
I'm just saying thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome, Cindy. Okay, see, special provisions, I know they're going to give us some more room than that. So hopefully this will still stay at 11 pages, but I think that they're just going to scoot that down and give a little bit more, because there's only, maybe one line there that you could even put anything in there. So I know that this is just the first one. They'll give us more space before they roll it out. So that's 10. The next one really that changes is 21. Let's see. Actually, 18 changes a bit. It's just saying the escrow agent may require any disbursement made in connection with this contract to be conditioned on escrow agent's collection of good funds, saying it better be a good check if it's a check, basically. And it's just addressing the expenses and the escrow mostly. So that's not really, it looks like a lot of double talk to me. The next thing they did in 21 under the notices, they gave another line so you can have an email or fax for 2 different members of the family or 2 different partners or whatever they are to this situation to be notified. So it gives you just another line for an additional email. You could even put your own in there as one of them, and your seller or your buyer as one of them as well. So it's just giving you more choices. So that's that. And then under 20, that's 21. On 22, they went ahead and added these new addendums that they passed, and they are approved and ready to use, and they are available in the system, I believe. I'm pretty sure they are. It's addendum regarding residential leases and addendum regarding fixture leases. So that's going to be permanently put in there. So that's a change. So they added that at least. You'd think they'd go ahead and put in the residential service contract disclosure because that's used so often, but they did not. Okay, what else? Okay, next we have, you can see where they took out termination option. That's what we used to have. And so it's just that little bit there. We have a whole section about the termination option back up at the front. So they took that out and removed that. What else? 23. Yeah, this paragraph was deleted to follow the changes in paragraph 5. The broker information now contains additional space for team names. Isn't that interesting? Now look down here, the next page. Now it's got a place for you can put a team name on there. Associate's name, team name on each side. And down here, if you're on an intermediary situation, which is kind of interesting because if you're on a team and you can see that there are 2 people on the same team on different sides, you know, there's nothing that they can do about that, but it just makes you wonder. If I was a person, I'd be wondering, well, are they sharing anything? And of course, I'm saying, no, they would definitely not share anything. But you never know. It just helps to have that information. So if you're with a team, then you put that team name down if you know it. And that's basically the changes. So I don't think it's, and they just put this down. They added that and took that away. So it's mostly cosmetic items. And of course, on the last page 11, they've changed it from seller or listing broker to escrow agent. So that's pretty plain. You know, it's not anything scary. It's version 20-15 of TREC. So I guess there's been that many changes. Okay, so what do y'all think about that? Those changes. I know everybody's going to have their opinion about the option fee and all, but what do y'all think about it?
We're happy about that.
Good.
Alice,
Yes.
Alice, this is Veronica Gonzalez.
Hi, Veronica.
Hi. There was a question in your chat, and it was, what are fixture leases? And I also was wondering what fixture leases were.
That's a good question, and I could tell you that. If you want to bear just a second, I'll see if I can find that form because I've been looking at it. Okay. Addendum for fixture leases.
Like water.
Seller leases and does not own the following. So it's talking about solar panels, propane tanks, or water softeners, or security systems. It's wanting to know, do you own them or do you not own them? The lease fixtures are excluded from the property defined in paragraph 2, or C, delivery of fixture leases. Either you got 2 choices. Buyer has received a copy of the leases of the lease fixtures, or buyer has not received a copy of the fixture leases. And sellers shall provide a copy of the fixture leases within 5 days after the effective date. So it's talking about those items that kind of jump out and get you at the end and kind of scare you. So
Okay.
that's what it's talking about, exactly.
Thank you.
And the other form, what was that called? That was
Was it the leases? That is that if you have your house leased out?
oh, it's this one. Just a second. It's proposed addendum regarding residential leases, and it's talking about any existing leases that are on the property when they're sold. So it's a big old 1 page. It's got a lot of good stuff on it. I don't have it where I can put it up on the screen for you, but it's talking about termination of residential leases. Either all residential leases must be terminated by closing. That's one choice, or assignment and assumption of residential leases. That's another choice. And then it has all these different things that you can state in here that except as stated above, seller represents to each residential lease. The residential lease is in full force and effect according to its terms, and no tenant is in default. So it's a lot more specific about what they're inheriting if they do stay in there and leave the tenants in. So it's either getting them out, and that's going to be real hard for them to do, or it's a matter of tell us what we're inheriting. Okay.
Alice,
Yes.
On the fixture leases, do you know if I'm selling a property and I don't give notice of this water heater or water softener that's been leased,
Yeah.
what happens to is that my responsibility since it's in my name or the future owner? Do you know how that works?
Who signed up for it?
Let's say I'm the owner, I leased the water softener and I'm selling it.
Aha. Did the buyer sign up for it? No.
No.
So their name isn't associated with it. However, if you move out with that being not disclosed or anything, it's not good. And they could be held responsible for it because that product is still in the house. And that's happened before to other people. Security systems could be one that, and you can say, well, I didn't want it, just come and take it out. And they'll do that, but they're still going to charge you if there's any charges due for that. So if you find out toward the end that there's something like that, you need to address it with the sellers ASAP if you're the buyer to make sure that you don't take that on. Same thing with water softeners, that you see that a lot. Okay. So that's the biggie right there. Okay, let's see. I think that's
Alex?
about all. Go right ahead.
This is Alham. So back
Yeah.
to John's question. So
Yes.
thermostat usually comes with the AC system. It's not leasable.
What
So
is it now?
the thermostat that John mentioned.
Yes.
So thermostat doesn't fall under lease, right? Because it comes with the house.
It's not a lease, but it's a personal item if you've upgraded to like a Nest smart item. If you're saying that if you're leaving that Nest in there while you're showing, you need to put in that contract, that offer when you get it, that the Nest does not go, or negotiate that they can have it in lieu of something else. But if you don't want that to go because it's an upgrade smart thermostat, Elham, if you don't want that to go, you need to be specific about that.
Okay.
And make sure they know up front that's not included. And of course, what does that do to everybody, Elham? That makes them focus on what they can't have. Oh, you can't have that. Oh, okay. Well, I need this over here, these repairs, but I'll take that Nest in place of it or something to that effect.
So it falls under seller's responsibility to show what they are replacing the Nest with. I guess. I don't
think
know.
if the seller wants to just leave the Nest, because this happened to me recently, and I
Yeah.
think that's the intent behind my understanding of the intent of this contract is the difficulty was the sellers had no intent of removing the current Nest in the home, but the problem came afterwards with them relinquishing their passwords and all of that baloney so that the new owners could set up their system. So I think that's what they're trying to convey in that first section that you were talking about is if you have one of those, you got to give up all your passwords and software and whatnot,
right,
so the new owners can use those systems.
Yes. And so if you don't want it to remain, then don't let them see it to begin with.
Right.
I
Okay.
think the
Thank you.
biggest thing on these thermostats is like mine, I would not give up your passwords or anything else, but give them the instructions that this is what they're going to have to do in order to make it work.
If they've got a password on it, John, they're not going to be able to bypass that if you don't give them the password that you're using now, so that they can rename it.
May I offer a suggestion? So what I have shared with my sellers previously is to change the username and password prior to selling.
There you go.
And then divulge that. It could be ABC123 as a password.
Perfect.
Yes.
Just like you would have like a security for somebody to have little buttons to get in the garage. Give one to guests, and once they've used that, don't give them your own personal stuff. Just use that one and let them go with it.
Alice, this is Bernadette.
Yes.
I recently just sold my house and I had a Nest thermostat and a Ring doorbell.
Uh-huh.
If you go onto their website, there's directions on how to reset it so that it's available to be used as a new product for the next user.
Oh, that's good.
So what I did is I just downloaded those directions and I cleared all my passwords and accounts so that when they got it, they had the directions to start anew.
Good. That's good. And that'll work unless you're leaving it up and you're clearing everything out and you have nothing to control your AC or your heating with. That could be for a few days until you close and get out of there. But that's good to know, and that's something that I may need to look into deeper so I can provide that information for our agents as well. I need to look online for that. Thanks for that thought. Okay, guys. Now we're going to look at the any more questions about the new contract that's coming up in February of all time. So I kept looking around thinking, oh, they just announced it, so they're bound to have a clean copy or I can redo my handout. No.
Hey,
We get a clean copy. We can't use this before February.
If once it's put up on the websites, you can use it, but that's probably going to be a week or two before February, probably in January or something. They'll start putting it up, and at the time they put it up, if it's up, you can use it anytime at that point. But it becomes mandatory to use the new one as of April 1st. Everybody must be switched over to the latest one. Okay.
Alice, would that recording be available? The recording, would it be available for us to review one more time?
Yes, it should be available. I see that it's being recorded right now, so that shouldn't be a problem. There's one that I did last time up on our kwaustonnw.com website, and they'll probably put this one up there as well. And this one I'll probably not curse as much. So anyway, this will probably be a good one. What else? I'm just kidding. I didn't curse.
I have a
Alice,
question.
Carol, go ahead.
Can we start doing the option in earnest money like this new contract is saying? Can we start delivering it all to the title company, or do we have to wait till we can use it?
No, because you would be doing something opposite from what the current contract says. So no, can't do that yet. And it's not nice of them to tease us this early, is it?
I know. So not fair. Okay.
But I wanted y'all to know about it as early as possible so we can all wrap our heads around it and get with the program when it rolls out. Veronica, you had a question?
Yes, ma'am. If an agent is using .loop, which I know, hopefully not too many are, is this new contract going to be on .loop? Will the new contract be on .loop?
It should all be on all systems when they're ready to release it.
Okay.
And it will be in DocuSign as well. It'll be in all of them.
Okay, thank you.
It's just right now, that thing I sent to y'all that registered. It's the form description and reference I'm always using. I sent that to the ones that registered ahead. And just know that this is dated 3/20 this year, and they've made changes since May. So the ones that I sent out to you should have, I went in and revised the dates so you know the date that it was effective, something in May. There's a couple of items. So they're really slow to update on their website for who knows what reason.
Alice, this is Deborah. I thought nobody was updating the .loop docs.
Okay, nobody is updating the templates, but before when we were using it, we had the TAR, which is now Texas Realtors forms on there. So you may have to go in and update. If you've got a template set up, you may have to go in and update and add that new one in place of the one you're using. If you've got templates, it's not going to update your template unless it came from the Texas Realtors site when they put it in there. So it affects templates. It doesn't affect the TXR documents that we have finally got permission from on there to put the latest and the greatest. Okay. Does that help?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know that I ever had templates. I just pulled my own docs in every time I used it. So you're saying if I did that versus created my own, every time for a buyer or whatever deal, that I'll be able to pull those docs.
When we were using .loop, I had set up templates for every type of transaction.
Oh, okay. So I was.
So when you went to the forms, you could say you wanted this type of 1 to 4 packet. It would pull all the forms in it And you would just delete or archive the ones you didn't need.
Okay, okay, okay,
But
thanks.
hopefully nobody's using dot loop anymore. But if you are,
Yeah,
get with
I'm
program.
struggling to, I'm clumsily using DocuSign now. There
Welcome
was a lot of things in dot loop that were more friendly as a user,
Oh.
in my opinion.
Oh,
But-
Deborah, you're so kind. Somebody just shared something with us, and I don't know if they meant to do that. Is that you, Joe?
Nope.
Okay. How do I unshare it? Does anybody know who this is? Thank you, whoever put that up. Okay. I didn't know that anybody else could share except for the host. But anyway, let's move on. Okay, so next we've got, we're done with the new, what we've got to look forward to. We'll just get used to it. And I'm sure there'll be more questions and more clarifications as we get closer to February. Okay, so don't panic. Don't panic. Okay. So we're going to go back to the version of the contract that we're using now, which has a date on it of 2/12/18. So every year or two, I think the attorneys get together and decide, let's change this. Let's change this up and really mess them up and confuse them. So this one's pretty simple. Just about the time we get it under control and we understand it, they switch it up and give us a new one. But anyway, that's the latest version. Always use the latest version that's available, which that's the one that's available right now. If a promulgated form exists, it must be used. And just keep in mind, don't create something on your own if there's a form for it out there. That's just asking for trouble. Point to remember for your sellers, it's not what you disclose that hurts you, it's what you don't disclose. Because when the neighbors come over and say, oh, isn't that a shame what happened to their whole heating system, or when their house burned or whatever, and you don't know about it, trust me, they're going to start looking at you like, what? Why didn't you tell us about this or something? So disclose, disclose, disclose. And then remember, it takes one to buy, but two to sell. These are old sayings, but they're still accurate and still true. So just because a person and maybe their spouse or partner or separating or whatever, you want to get everybody on board then, rather than when somebody gets upset later on and they stamp their foot and say, well, I'm not going to sign that contract unless you agree to give me this much more alimony or whatever they're trying to negotiate. Just keep in mind, I live in a very dark world and see all the nasty stuff like that. I once had a closing where the husband stayed in signing the paper. The woman was so upset she sat in the car, and I was babysitting their child. So it's like, okay, we do what we have to do. So we got templates set up of what typical transaction documents you need. Any forms that you don't need or don't use, just archive them. You can't delete anything, just like in a dot loop, but you don't have to look at them every time. And we don't call them loops anymore. We call them opportunities. Doesn't that sound positive? Opportunities, and those have an opportunity number. So whenever you inquire about an opportunity, always make sure you have that 08 dash and then 6-digit number. Make sure you have that when you're inquiring about something with compliance or accounting, so that we can go in and locate that. Because that's when we get in problem. We have problems when we can't do that. Okay, so we already went over what to do, important things to remember. The first part here is, can y'all see that? Well, let's try it here. Let's see. I think that's it. Is that the right one? Yep. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. So what I did in here was, I'm not always available. It seems like I am, but sometimes I'm not available, and you may have a question about something. So what I did was I went ahead and just took every paragraph and went in and thought of it as a brand new agent. What does this mean? What goes in here? what should I put in here? Because I don't, when you're new, you don't want to appear ignorant. And even if you are, but recognizing that you are, that's the first step. That's okay, because then you got to do some research and check out some things. So that means you're not ignorant at all. You just have to go in and figure out what's there. Because when someone asks, you're sitting at the table, if someone asks you what a paragraph means, you don't have to, I'm not wanting you to go with your little cheat sheet and look it up. But on the other hand, if you're on a phone call or something, you say, let me check on that for you and get back with you if you don't know something. That's a little bit more palatable than saying, I'm not sure, let me ask somebody else and see if they know what that is. That does not give your client warm fuzzies about you. So don't do that. What else? I'm trying to make this bigger so I can see you guys.
So Alice, did you create a similar one for the newer one, for the new contract that's coming out, or this is just for the old one?
Well, what I was saying earlier, this is the old one because they don't have a clean copy that I can use for you guys on the new one. And also, Tiramal, they don't, they're not using this until February, middle of February. So people that are in this class right now need to know what to do for the current contracts that they're writing before February. So that's the reason I did the first maybe half hour about the new one. So anybody who doesn't need to see about the old one, they can leave if they need to. I don't want you to leave because you'll always get something out of it. But if you need to, we're not talking about the new one anymore because it's not in effect yet, Tiramal. Get it? So
thank you.
You're so welcome. Any questions y'all have, just speak up because I'm looking over here at this form. So the first paragraph is pretty simple. It just says it's the names of the buyers and the sellers. And you go, where do I find that information? Well, you can ask the other agent. You can look on the tax record to see who it shows as the owners. That's probably the smartest way to do. And if you're representing the buyers and you're writing this up, ask the buyers how they want their name to be displayed on the contract. Is it Alice A. Carone? Is it Alice Carone? Is it Alice Ann Carone? What do they want? So just find out from them what they want. But the tax record, the realist record should show them on there. Sometimes if they're selling it right away and they haven't updated to who the current seller is, then you may have to, revise that offer because it's not the same people. All right.
This is
Yes.
Cindy, for
Yes.
the parties. Let's say you're representing the buyer. Do you let them use what they want, or is it better to use what's on their driver's license, or is that okay either way?
As long as they have something showing, they're going to have to show the title company that that's their name.
Okay.
They're gonna pick what their legal name is on there, unless they're not smart enough to do that. But they should use a name that they have something that they can show that is them. If they've had a name change or something, they just need to show that paperwork to title, not to you, but when they get into title's going to ask them to prove who they are. Okay. So that's that. That's a paragraph 1. We made it through that one. Okay, let's go. Pretty simple. Next page is property. And so first one was the buyers and the sellers. The second paragraph is about the property. They want to know the lot and block, if you can find that on the tax record, the addition, so what neighborhood it is, and what city and county, and hopefully it's in Texas, and because this is a Texas document. And then the actual address of the property is on there in paragraph 2. Then it goes into improvements, accessories, and exclusions. Now, where we were talking earlier about if something needed to be excluded, that your sellers don't want that to go. Typically, this is where the seller would put in there that ornate mirror in the dining room belonged to Aunt Bessie. Well, you don't put that on there, but put that the ornate mirror hanging in the dining room does not go with it. So just make sure that if there's something that's still there that they don't mean to transfer, could be some expensive drapes or something. And at that point, then you have a talk with them. Okay, are those drapes worth ruining this opportunity? in the kind of market we're in right now, if you miss this bus, you'll probably catch another one real soon, because I'm hearing, like, so many multiple offers at this point, it's ridiculous. And I'm hearing up from $50,000 to $150,000 over the list price. Cash. People are just crazy right now wanting these properties. So that's where they would put exclusions and reservations for gas, other minerals, water, timber, or other interests, per the addendum that would be attached to that. I don't see that filled out very often. If you were in Fort Worth, the Fort Worth area, you'd see more of that, because there's more oil and more gas, actually. Like East Texas, you'd see more oil and other minerals and things like that, timber, but you don't see that very often here. So that's paragraph 2. And it just basically says, typically, if you picked up the house and turned it upside down and shook it, what doesn't fall down should stay with it. Now, keep in mind, that's not true about refrigerators, some microwaves, things like that are plugged in. We're talking about permanently wired in, or it could be a spa on the patio. They mentioned they have a spa. Well, if they mention they have a spa, then you're expecting to have that spa, right, on the MLS. So one of my first duties when I first took this job almost 15 years ago was to tell this couple that worked together in our office that they had to purchase a $3,500 spa for these buyers, because their seller clipped the wires that was in wires from the wall and sold it on Craigslist. And the buyers were expecting to have it. The sellers sold it on Craigslist. And so unless they could get the seller to reimburse them, the agent had to cough up the $3,500 for them to get a replacement spa. Don't ever get caught in that kind of situation. Forgive me. Forgive me. Let me get some water here. So if something is wanted by your buyer and it's not really permanently affixed or something, there's a thing, there's a form called the Non-Realty Addendum, and that's what you should use for that. It's a Non-Realty Addendum. It's TXR 1924, and that specifies what's to remain. And usually it's for $0. You don't typically see any dollars like that. There are times when you should use a bill of sale for certain. There's a lot of things, so it doesn't, affect the prices when they go to get a loan and stuff. But just know that exclusions should be noted, and anything that they're wanting should be put on a non-realty addendum. Even if it says in the MLS that it has a spa, if you're wanting that, your client's wanting that, expecting to have that spa, I would do a non-realty addendum to make sure they understand this is connected with that, because what you don't want to have are those little nebulous things that they thought that it wasn't included because you didn't ask for it, but they put it on the MLS. So if we put it on the MLS, it's saying that it should go. But sometimes you hear, well, we didn't negotiate the price because we didn't think we were going to have that. So it just makes more problems if you don't address it up front that my client wants this, and we're putting it in, send that non-realty addendum with your offer, so they know right up front you're expecting to get that. Okay. So sometimes it's both agents' fault when it's not very clear, and that doesn't feel good, but that's just the way life is. So that's next we go to sales price. We pretty much can figure that out. There's three things you have to consider: the cash, what they're putting down, the sum of all financing, or in the actual sales price. So A and B should equal C. And they don't have something that calculates it for us. Luckily, we all have phones that have little calculators on them, so you should be able to do that. Another thing, be sure that you check one of those boxes. If it's typically, you'll see third-party financing addendum is what it's put in. If it's cash, you don't check any of those boxes. You'd have cash portion would go in there, what you're paying cash for it, and the sales price would go in there, the same number that you're paying for it. Okay. So that's pretty clear right there. Third-party financing addendum, make sure if it's got a loan that they need to have that third-party financing addendum done. And I've got the number of that on there for you as well. Pretty clear, huh? Okay. Now we're back to the license holder disclosure we're talking about earlier in that new version. This Texas law requires a real estate license holder to disclose if you have a familial relationship with the principals of the transaction or you have ownership of a property that you're involved in. So that's where you would disclose that. And I don't really think it's that. If you had ownership in it, that's one thing. I don't think that it really is important. Obviously it is, but in my own opinion, who cares if it belongs to my brother or my sister? That just means I'm going to work harder because working with family and friends are the hardest transactions you'll run across because they expect everything. So it's a little bit more difficult. But that's where you would disclose that if you had a familial relationship with one of the principals, okay? That was added in 2016, so pretty much everybody's used to that now.
And Alice, are you saying it would be okay to put, like actually what to write in that is just listing agent has familial relationship to the buyer. Let's say I'm helping.
Yes.
But
Yes.
you don't have to say what type of relationship.
I think that's adequate. Just that. And I've had people ask me, well, it's my third cousin by my, whatever. Just disclose it. It's not gonna hurt anything. Just say you have a familial relationship with buyer or seller or that, and then you've got that out of the way. I disclosed it because it's really not going to affect anything much.
What if your husband, like we're buying right now, and my husband everything will be in his name at the beginning.
Okay.
We could still put familial relationship. Okay. Absolutely.
If you're using this contract, if it's not a new build, they have their own contracts, obviously, and you typically, unless they're a small builder. And of course, you wouldn't be able to do that then, but they're going to know that. Basically, this is just disclosing that if you are an agent involved in this, that you have a relationship, okay? So that would be the place to put that, Cindy. Okay, next we have Earnest Money. It's talking about...
Yes. Excuse me, this is Maggie. Real quick, so if you have on each side of the transaction, there's a lot of people involved who are license holders and not enough room to put everyone's disclosure. Is there another place in the contract to write it in?
The only other place you could put it would be in special provisions.
Okay.
So you're talking about additional sellers or additional buyers or what?
Yeah, if there's, let's say, two, on each side, there's a license holder, then you could just write it in the special provisions.
Well, what I would do is if the listing agent had a familial relationship with the seller and the buyer's agent had a familial relationship with the buyer, then that should fit in there.
I had a seller who wanted me to write all sorts of things. He was like an investor. He wanted to put his company in there. He wanted to word it really eloquently, but it was really long. And then I didn't have a place to put my name and license number in there.
Okay, so bottom line is we put factual things in special provisions and any of the blanks that calls for that. If there's a blank for it, you should use that if at all possible. If there's not enough room, you could write C special provisions for additional information or something like the info.
Right, okay.
Okay, so just know that buyers and sellers want all kinds of things. And some of the things we can write in and some of the things we can't because it looks like we're practicing law. Mm-hmm. So because of that, say if you'd like to type something up and put the blanks for everybody to sign it, I'll say see attachment A from buyer or seller or whatever, but I'm not allowed to do that. Okay, that's one way to get you out of the middle of it as you're not practicing law.
No, it was all factual. It was just a very long way of saying I'm also a real estate agent.
It was a very long way of saying, hey, I know more than you, so don't try to fool me.
Alice, I actually had a question about that. So I would assume, usually it's the buyer's agent that's writing up the contract. So we're the ones stating our familial relationship.
Yeah.
Is the seller going back and asking the buyer's agent to fill that out? I mean, shouldn't they be filling that out like when they did the listing? Like why would you have the seller and the buyer familial status on this line?
You wouldn't unless that was the case.
Okay. Well, no, what I'm saying is like in practice.
Each side, you don't write something for the opposite side, if that's what you're talking about. No.
Yeah.
You allow them to represent their side. You don't step over that line of putting information in there for them.
So if I wrote up the contract and I sent it over to the listing agent, you're saying that here in Texas, the listing agent might add to the contract that I drafted their relationship on this contract.
Possibly, yes. And of course, that would have to go back and be initialed by everybody.
Okay. Just
Okay?
ask, I'm a newbie, so it's better to.
Yeah, that's fine.
I'm so sorry. How do you go back and add like one more line, or not line, but like one more piece of information after everyone had already signed?
Well, after they've signed it, it's done. You never touch that document again. You would use an amendment. But while you're in the negotiating phase, before every initial and every signature is on it, at that point, you can revise it as you go along there.
So when I'm writing up the offer, and then everyone on my side signs, then I send it over and realize, oh, now the something minor has changed. Like the buyers want to maybe increase the option just a little bit. I have to go in and rewrite the whole 1 to 4, or is there a way to just add like just that section?
Okay, here's the deal. Before you submit it, make sure you've got the numbers right, because you don't want to withdraw it back, and when they may have already signed it, and you've kind of slowed the process down. They may have already signed it, and you're not trying to get in the way. Just let it go, because chances are they're going to negotiate and change something on it, and when they send that back to you with their changes, that is the time that you would do that change. You can withdraw an offer, but I don't recommend doing that. Not in this market right now.
I'm not really talking about withdrawing an offer. I'm talking about like before sending the offer in, if the buyer was, got cold feet and wanted to add a little bit of earnest money, for example.
Well, then you just change that part on there.
But I mean, after they already signed, like initialed it, is there a way to?
Only one side has signed it.
Yeah, only one side has signed it.
At that point, you can change it, but they're going to have to probably re-sign it at that point.
So where do I learn how to change
some of this we may need to do after class, because we have a lot of stuff to get through.
Yeah, I don't want to take up all your time.
Go ahead in this one question. What was your question?
No, well, how do I go back and before the other party signs, how do I go back and change it after my buyers had already signed?
Okay, that is another class.
Okay.
I'm here to teach you about the contract.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That is a command question.
Okay.
That you would go in and dot loop. It used to be that you would go in and you just withdraw it back here and make a change, send it to your clients and have them assign or initial it, and then send it on that way. I'm not sure exactly with command right now, because I don't have time to really. I'm confess.
Yeah, I don't want to take up the class's time. So I'll just ask you after class, just so you can point me in the right direction where to take that class.
The person to talk to is Eamon. He's our IT person, AYMAN. He's from Australia. He's a really cool guy, really nice, and on top of things, very organized.
Okay.
Thank
you. I'm sorry.
No, not at all. Don't worry about that, hon. Earnest money. So we've got there. We'll put out the earnest check is always made out to the title company, right? Now, starting in February, option check will be too. But right now, until February, or until those new forms roll out, you'll put earnest money goes to the title company. Option fee is made out to the sellers. Okay. And never, ever, ever, ever use one of your personal checks to write option fee for somebody just because they forgot to give you one. what I would recommend. I had a very experienced agent call me on a Sunday and say, Alice, this is the last day of option, and my client's option money is locked up in the title company. They overnighted both checks to title, and now this is the third day and I don't have it. I said, well, let me ask you, how much is option? It's $100. I said, well, you're lucky, because do you have $100 in your account? He goes, yeah. I said, okay, go to HEB or someplace else, get a money order for $100, and make sure your client knows they owe you big time, because you've saved them by getting their option fee. So don't have a check written by you, but if you got in a bind like that, what I'm saying is you could do that with a money order or something that shows that it's made payable to those sellers, because it doesn't have your name on it. Okay? You're not a party, you're not a principal in the transaction, so you don't do that. And just know that a lot of things are going to be simpler when they go to this new system where title takes the money on both sides. And they'll get used to it. It's just right now its change is different, but they'll get used to it. It'll be fine. We'll take another sip. Okay. So I think we beat earnest money to death here. Let's go on to the next page.
Alice, I did have a quick question about the
Yes.
earnest money.
Okay.
In practice here in Austin, do the buyers typically do like certified funds, or is it okay for them to do a personal check?
Personal check is fine. Personal check is acceptable. The only thing they don't want is cash.
Okay. And then I've seen on the files on the drive, people put a title company and a specific name of a person. Do you have to put that, or can you just put?
Everything is negotiable in an offer. Everything is negotiable. Just because in a listing or in an MLS it says, please use this title company, what that tells me is they want you to use that title company because they had something in there before and they've done some work on it and they want it to go back to that person. So I'd be asking them, oh, did you have another offer on this before that you want to use this title company? Because I'd like to use XYZ title company.
Okay.
So everything's negotiable in this. Okay. You don't want to lose a deal over a title company though.
Yeah, I don't mind that. I'll go anywhere.
Yeah.
I don't know if people,
Yeah.
you know,
It's all negotiable.
in the
Okay.
sample on the coach drive, it had a person's name. So I was just wondering, oh, do we put the exact escrow agent? And then do you ever use the additional earnest money?
No.
Okay. That's
Typically
not.
not. Typically not. The time you might do that is if you put a smaller amount of earnest money up because you're in a backup position or something, and you said if you move into primary, you'll add additional earnest money or additional option fees. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Alex,
move
I
on.
had a situation where, going back to what she just talked about, the agent listed a particular title escrow agent.
Yep.
We actually had to do a contract amendment because that escrow agent had moved to a different location.
Yes. Okay. So that happens very infrequently though, Joe. That doesn't happen very often. There's certain people that, they're going to be there no matter what. And you should know if that person's about
wouldn't it be easier just to put the title company name and not the agent name? That way, if that person moves, you still have the title company in there.
It's not required to put a name.
Okay.
Okay, it's not required. Just some people like certain people, the way they handle their business. And so real estate is all about relationships. So their relationship is about with this person. That's just, all you can say about that. So you don't have to have a name on there, but you do need to have a title company name or attorney name if they're using a fee attorney or something. Other states use attorneys more than they do title companies, but anyway, that's that. Let's go on to title policy and survey. In this, you're going to say seller shall furnish to buyer at, there's a little boxes there to check seller's or buyer's expense. Now, typically, title policy is a seller's expense, and typically survey is a buyer's expense. But like I said, everything's negotiable. In this market where everybody is trying to do everything they can to get a deal, They may agree to pay everything. They'll pay, the buyers may agree to pay the title policy, the survey, anything else just to get the deal. But once they've agreed to it, just know that they're going to have to follow that. And also under 6A on number 9, there's some more little boxes there that you can decide if it will not be amended or deleted from the title policy, or will be amended to read shortages in area. And that is so confusing that title has created this little form here about deleting the area and boundary exception. So it's basically saying, what is the area and boundary exception? The area and boundary exception is the language on Schedule B of a title commitment and title policy that says the title insurer is not liable for discrepancies in boundary lines, other people's structures built over their property lines, or other similar issues that would be shown on a survey of the property. So that to have that coverage, you have to say will be amended to read shortages in area at the expense of buyer or seller. So I would say that if you've got land or something like that, that there could be encroachments, or water could be, located the wrong place or something to that effect, I highly recommend that you pay for that extra coverage. It's a minimal amount. It's not very much at all, and so it's worth it to me. I think I would always recommend. It's going to be like $150, $200 additional to have that coverage. So I've seen lot lines where there's problems with the who owns what part of the fence is put on the wrong side or something like that. This is saying if there's something wrong with what's on there, that they will agree to have it to help fix it. Not help fix it, but help look into the matter and take care of it that way. Okay. So that's that. And you can see my notes. It just says what the exceptions to what title insurance will cover, 1 through 8, and then we're talking about the one exception is on number 8 is the one that they can amend to say that it will cover certain things.
And Alice, if for this section, let's say the seller is saying that they'll pay for the title policy, but they don't want to pay for this, can you have 2 different things, like the seller pays the title policy, but the buyer
Absolutely.
this little extra? Okay.
No problem. You could have the seller up at the top, and you could have the buyer at the bottom, that they want to pay for that extra.
Okay.
Okay, that's a good question. Okay, next we have commitment. It's just talking about the chain of title for that property, is basically what that title commitment is going to be. And that should be coming from the title company to your client, and they should send you a copy as well, so you can look at it also. But basically, what that title policy is going to show, it's going to show what the title commitment is covering. And it also would show up if there's some kind of liens or something on the property that could be tax liens, or a provider lien on it or something, if it's been registered that way. So that's when you find out if it's clear title and all. Okay. Schedule D just shows who are the officers and directors of the title company, and the amount of the premium. That's pretty simple. Next we have survey. The survey, like I said, is typically, but everything's negotiable. Survey is typically a buyer expense, and it's going to be in the range of $500 to $700 for a survey. And this is really, really important now. If you represent a seller and you're taking a listing, you started out with a listing. If they say, oh, I think I have a copy of the survey in my paperwork, don't let them agree to it until they can find that survey and take it somewhere and get it, the T47 affidavit notarized saying that they've not changed anything on there. Okay. Because if it says that if they don't give the survey that they said they had and the T47 affidavit, it says in bold, if seller fails to furnish the existing survey or affidavit within the time prescribed, buyer shall obtain a new survey at seller's expense, no later than 3 days prior to closing date. Well, typically it's a buyer's expense, but if sellers kind of shot themselves in the foot by thinking they could find it and then they weren't able to find it. So make sure that they understand that if they don't deliver it with a T47 within that time period, the buyer has the permission per the contract to buy another one at seller's expense. Okay.
Alice, what is a good amount of days that you can put in there?
Oh gosh, it's so, well, for number one, I would say within the effective date, I would say within like 2 or 3 days, because if they either have it or they don't have it. And that gives them time also, when they put their house on the market, if they have a survey, I would go and tell them they need to go and get that T47 affidavit done then. So you're not waiting for them to have time to go do it or something. Okay. And then number two is within so many days after the effective date, buyer shall obtain it at buyer's expense, or 3, within so many days, seller at seller's expense. So if they don't furnish it up there where they were going to, they're going to be buying one. And that's what a lot of times they don't understand.
And how many days do you give the seller in part 3 if they're going to do it? Or if you're the listing agent, do you typically wait to list until they get it?
Well, you're not going to get it right away, first of all.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to think how many days I came up with it.
It takes a while to get that.
Let's see.
Oh, I see.
A new survey can take a minimum of 15 days, but depends on the market. The market's crazy right now, so it's taking a little bit longer than that.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, so give them something to aim for, though, and something reasonable, like 15, 21 days, something that they can, because you want to see that if there's any obstructions on there, if they're having to get a new one, you want to know right away. Okay. Okay. Objections. These are objections from the buyer. Buyer may object in writing to defects, exceptions, or encumbrances to title. So they've gotten that title policy and they've seen something that they don't like, or they've seen something from something that they didn't like. This is where their chances, they're going to provide a limitation on the buyer's time to object to something on the title commitment or survey. So use or activity up there in that blank, typically it's something it's used for residential use, typically. You could say something to help your clients protect them. You could say something like, or use to be able to complete a swimming pool in the backyard, or something that says that they're objecting if they can't do what they're wanting to do. But typically all you see is for to be able to be used as residential use. That's typically what you see in there, or you see nothing typically. And buyer must object the earlier of the closing date, or let's see, they give them so many days. 5 to 7 days is a good time frame. If seller is unable to cure the objection, if they can't do it, title can give them an automatic 15-day extension for that. And so if that's a deal breaker there, then that's your chance to say, well, they're not able to do that within that time period. So are
these items identified in the title commitment?
Yes. Okay. Yes. Title commitment or survey. Okay. If you see something there that they object to. All right. So that's that. Next we have title notices. That's something all from the title company is going to usually take care of that. Abstract or title policy, or membership in a property owners association or HOA. Let me mute myself so I can cough here.
And Alice, sorry, part D, before you went on, I had a question. I know, yes, I know it's a seller's market, so you really, as the buyer, don't want to put too many things that would, make your offer not look as competitive. But could you put something there like, a lot of people are wanting accessory dwelling units. Could you put something like that there, or is that more of a zoning thing that you should be checking into beforehand?
Well, you should check into it beforehand, but if that's a deal breaker for you, that would be the place to put it. Mm-hmm. Okay, that would be your objection if you can't build that accessory building or whatever for an office or whatever it is you're wanting to build out there, because think what else is included is involved in there is the HOA rules. So there's all kinds of things that you can have a gotcha.
Oh, so this section is for all those little documents you should be receiving if it's like a condo or HOA or something like that.
This we're specifically talking about the title policy of the survey.
Oh,
Okay. All right. So we talked about the homeowners association. You check the box. It is or is not subject to mandatory membership. And sometimes they're just you can join it or you don't have to. It's not required. And so you just leave it and say it is not, or whatever it is that you want to know. It says you are obligated to pay assessments to the Property Owners Association. The amount of the assessments is subject to change. Your failure to pay the assessments could result in enforcement of the association's lien on and the foreclosure of the property if you are not paying your HOA dues. So you need to know what those HOA dues are so your buyer can know what they are, and you should be having all of that looked into already. Okay, so that's that. Okay, let's go to the next page. Statutory tax districts. If there's an entity that has taxing authority over the property, buyers should be informed about that entity. Here in Texas, everything, this whole contract, all the contracts are geared toward protecting the buyer. So if you represent the seller, you have to pretty much know what has to be done, what doesn't have to be done. That about the only thing that you have it out is if the buyer doesn't perform or do something or deliver earnest money timely or that sort of thing. That's about it to be able to get out of this, because everything is geared to protecting the buyer. And also, all contracts are as-is contracts, as is. Now, you say, what is an as-is? It means just what is on there, but you can there's a section on there where you can say, or if you do this and this and this. My feeling is, I'll wait till we get to that point, but my feeling is we're negotiating price right now. We'll negotiate repairs or other things to do after I nail this down for my client, okay? It's not being deceitful, it's being watching out for your client to make sure that they get the house that they want. Okay, so that's the taxing entities. And that's where you'll also, if you're selling a new build, be sure you newbies that are selling new builds, remind your buyers that they need to be putting an extra escrow in their payment. And usually a good lender will tell them this additionally, that the taxes when they buy the new build home is based on the lot only. Once they've done the improvement and somebody buys that lot with the house on it, their taxes next year are going to like go through the roof. So they're going to have at the end of the year a big escrow amount due for that. So when I bought my house 3 years ago, they told me, okay, add a couple $100 to your payment every month to go toward your escrow so you won't get caught at the end of the year. And I'm so glad I did, because that I wound up having just enough to pay it. And it wasn't fun coming up with a couple of $100, but it sure wouldn't have been fun to have to come up with an extra $1,200 or $1,400 at that time either at Christmas. So just beware of new bills in that regard.
On paragraph 6, Alice,
Yeah.
all of Williamson County is basically in a.
Where are you looking? Where are you looking?
Paragraph 6 about the certified service area and utility, the MUD and the WCID.
Are we there yet?
Yeah, that's what I thought. That's what we were talking about. The paragraph 6.
Okay, let me find it where I am. Just a second. Bear with me. Okay, 6. Okay, so which 6 of what? Which part, hon?
Property located in a certificated service area or utility service provider. I think you already covered that. I thought we did.
I don't know where you're looking, hon. So
on top of page 13.
Oh, you're way further than I am. Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you had already covered that.
No, I'm not there yet.
Okay.
Okay, so we went through title notices, etc. Well, we got through there. Taxing authority, Tidewaters, we don't hardly have to worry about that, but if you were in Port Aransas or someplace on the coast, you'd need additional form for that and notifying them of changes and that sort of thing. It's mostly for coastal areas. What else? On the property located in a certificated service area of a utility service provider. Isn't that a mouthful? All they're talking about are MUDs and water districts. So how do you know if they're in one of those? You go to the tax record, because when you take a listing or when you're getting ready to make an offer, you should print out that tax record showing all the data so that they're basing their offer on. And on that, it'll show the taxing amount for the different providers of how they came up with all those taxes that are due.
And what's the difference in, I mean, if you look at the one statutory tax district number 3, and then certificate, isn't that the same thing? 6 and 3, because I thought that's what you were talking about when I'm interrupted. Statutory tax district, if the property is situated in a utility or other statutory, and then 6, isn't that the same thing? Property located.
It is exactly the same thing.
Okay.
But they went into more detail. This is specifically about the MUD and water district, and it's. Let me tell you how important this is. If you are a seller and you don't give the MUD or water district notice that you've gotten off of the appropriate MUD or water district site, it's not a form that comes in TREC or TXR or anything. You have to go to the website and find that MUD or water district notice. It shows what the taxing amount is. If you don't give that prior to execution of the contract, that buyer can walk up until day of closing. It's that important. So if you didn't, so what I put on here is what I would do is if I represented the seller, oops, I went too far. If I represented the seller, I'd make sure and get this signed at the listing appointment or soon thereafter. If I received an offer, I'd immediately send one to the buyer's agent showing when it was sent before putting an effective date on the contract. Or if I represented the buyer, I'd make sure that my buyer knew about the taxation, but I'd keep that in my back pocket and not ask them for it, because that is a way out if they needed one for some reason down the line.
But they would still lose their option.
We're not looking for outs, but we need to know if there is an out, that's what that is. I'm sorry, Maggie?
And so the buyer would still, if they did go out, then they would still lose their option?
Mm-hmm. You never lose option. You always lose option. I'm sorry, I'm saying okay. The buyer never gets option back, ever. Because if they got it back, there's no option.
But this protects the earnest.
One thing I should note too is Elizabeth came up with the idea. She was like wondering.
Is someone having a question, or are they talking to someone else?
I have a question, but this out would still protect the earnest money?
No, it would not. It would not protect any money. It depends on which side you're on. But like I said, if I represented the seller, I'd handle it this way. If I represented the buyer, I'd make sure my buyer knew about it, but I would hold that in my pocket for later on to make sure that if I needed an out, I would have one. Okay?
If I'm not mistaken, all of Williamson County, this affects all of Williamson County, because I had an agent, in my last sale, the agent had been, he's 16 years as an agent, and he didn't know that the property was located in a WCID.
Well, that's not unusual. That's very typical. And you can ask a seller. Don't depend on what the seller says, because I've had a situation where they say, oh yeah, we've got city water. We don't have MUD or water district. No, we don't have one of those. So the agent believed them. Don't believe them. Check on the tax record and see who the taxing entities, because not only did they have city water, they had a MUD and a water district. And what a MUD or a water district is for, it's for water or services for like a community pool, or for waste disposal, or maintenance, or fire services, or flood prevention, or parks. That's what that the other mud or water district covers. It's not going to cover necessarily, it could, your drinking water and that sort of thing. It's for other things that it would cover. So he had city water and a mud and a water district. And so the guy walked before they closed because he wasn't told that. And he gets his earnest money back.
And Alice, you mentioned that a good thing that you can't get the water info, like it's not a standard Trek form or anything.
No,
if you're
it's not. What you have to do is if you're like in Brushy Creek mud or something, or water district, you'd have to just Google that, come up with a form. You look on their website, there usually is a form section. You download that, that's your form, because you want to go by their website as having the latest information.
Okay, so that's generally available, because like if you're on the other side,
That's generally available.
Buyer, you could go get that and say, here buyer, this I found on the website, this is what it's going to cost. But then you don't notify, you know, I like the back pocket thing, but you still you can still find the information so that your buyer will be able to estimate the cost.
You let them know that this is a cost, but and that the other side was supposed to give it to you before we executed the contract, but they didn't. So whatever it is, you just let them know that. Okay.
Alice, this is Kate Johnston. Quick question.
Okay. Sure.
So did I understand that you had attached all these to us before this meeting?
If you registered, Kate, I did. If you did not register before 7 o'clock last night, I did not. The ones that registered, I sent out 18 packets last night, and then I sent out the rest of just the this handout and the 1 to 4 right now. I sent that
somewhere on the internet, or where can I get it? One of those package.
Well, per my email that I sent you, it said
I did not get one.
You didn't get an email? Maybe you're not in my system. Maybe you're not in my system yet, Kate, because you're so new. Okay, take this down, Kate, and email me so I don't forget it.
Okay.
Alice, ALICE, Caron, CARON @kw.com. Email me for all the handouts and I'll send them back to you.
Okay, thank you. My apologies.
Email me and let me know.
Okay.
And I am going to put all this stuff up there on the website. I finally decided to put the stuff up there, but I put you have to have a password to get in to get my secret stuff. So I didn't want the public out there having all the benefit of the knowledge that you are here because of you want the knowledge.
Is it the Google Drive? The coaching drive?
No, it's not. I mean, it could. You'd have to ask your coach. I don't know. I don't look at the coaching drive, to be honest with you. And we've had so many different coaches. Who knows what's on there? I don't have a clue of what maybe somebody put up there a long time ago. It might still be up there and it's not accurate. I don't know. So that's that. It's about MUDs and water districts. Very, very important. Okay. Public improvement districts. That's different, and that has to do with what it's going to be needing, like sidewalks and things like that. That improvements that's going to have to be done, and you don't see that very often here. I saw it more in the Fort Worth, that area over there, but I don't see it too much here. They call them PIDs. Don't see that too much. And it talks about transfer fees, and then it talks about propane gas system service areas. When they're talking about propane gas system service areas, they're talking about a service area. That means the whole development is being furnished propane gas, not just a propane gas tank out in the backyard like Granny had or something. We're talking about they're furnishing a whole development with propane gas. And you should be able to find that on the tax record as a taxing entity as well.
Hi, Alice.
It's not for individuals. Yes. Hey, Wendy.
Hi. Yes. Good morning. So I have one on the contract. The recent, happening yesterday that I see into the title commitment and find out it's in propane system service area, but it was not disclosed on the MLS system, and also it was not provided by the listing agent or the buyer, and the listing agent responds saying that both him and the seller doesn't know. So my clients right now has concern because it was not disclosed in the beginning. And so based on this item, what can we do about this transaction? There was no disclosure.
This is not an out for you. This is
I
not an
see.
out. Other things like the MUD water district, that specifically says it's an out. This is not an out. That means that they didn't disclose it. I tell you, some people, they might not even know it themselves, you know, they just take it for granted. They don't know. I mean, while I try to think the best of people. I used to think that way 15 years ago, but I'm pretty much over that. But just know that your client now knows it, and they need to you made the sellers aware that they hadn't disclosed that to you, and that was that's not an out for you though, unfortunately.
I see. So is it a way out? So if this one doesn't work as a way out, how about the title commitment to the objections?
The objections, yes, the objections, of course, that would be as long as you're doing it timely and objecting to it, it gives you so many days to object. That must be in writing from your client, not you. So they want to see an email directly from your client saying we object to blah, 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 and send that to title and to the other agent so that they're registering their objection right then.
So can it be the objection to propane system that disclose on the title commitment, or that's only the title commitment is only for residential use, the thing that we put into the space?
I don't think that the propane gas is that's going to happen for them, Wendy, unfortunately.
Okay.
I don't think that's going to fly. While I personally feel like it should be as important as the other, that water district is completely different, and it's stronger, a reason to be able to get out of it. Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
You're so welcome. Let's go to the next page. Notice of water level fluctuations. Well, don't we know we have that here if you have Lake Travis, or not so much Lake Austin, but Lake Travis property or some of the other lakes, that water level fluctuation happens all the time. So do you want to sell when the water level is low and your dock is floating out on the ground? If you don't have to, I would not, because that's when your property is worth a little less, because it'd be great if it had water out there, but until the water comes back and fills it up, it doesn't look so hot. So what it's saying is if the property adjoins an impoundment of water, including a reservoir or lake, it says it must be a storage capacity of at least 5,000 acre feet. And so obviously Lake Travis would fly. Lake Austin is pretty much the same height all the time because that's controlled in there. But Lake Travis, poor Lake Travis, can be down 30, 35 feet. I've seen it when the water's down 35 feet and that you can walk out almost to way out in the lake there because the water has receded so much, it's gone away. But it's saying if this subparagraph just warns the buyers if they're purchasing in an area, not a lake view, we're talking about on the water. That's the difference, because as you know, we have two seasons. We have drought or flooding seasons. It's either drought or it's rough when it's that way. So you'd like to buy it when the water's low, but maybe not when it's looking super. It just depends on which side you're on. So that's important. Property condition. It's saying here that utilities must remain on throughout the listing period and until closing, because inspections are going to be having to be done. And you can still have an inspection if you don't want an option period. I don't know why you would do that. I will always recommend having an option period, and you must pay that money for that option. If you don't pay, you don't play. So you've got to have that option period so that you can object. You can have inspections still, though. It's just that you can't negotiate anything from it because you didn't pay the option to be able to do that. So when you don't get an option, you're saying this as-is contract is really as is. Okay. So always leave the utilities on. Typically what you'll see on a HUD home or bank-owned REO property, they may not have the utilities on. You may have to call and have water and gas or something turned on so that it can be inspected for your client for a day or something.
Is it then a poor strategy to include a large option for negotiating later?
It's all more option looks better because the seller has been told that, you know, they will keep the option period, the option fee regardless. You don't ever get it back. I've seen a $5,000 option fee, and I was nervous the entire time of the transaction. I was like, oh, good God. So that's saying basically, I want this property no matter what, because the sellers already know that even if it doesn't fly with that deal, they're keeping the $5,000. But we're talking on a multi-million-dollar property as well when it's that. Typically, what you normally see for option is $100 to $250, $300, something like that. Sometimes you see 500, but I do not like the ones that are 5,000. Makes me really nervous.
But from the seller's perspective, as you know, I'm on the buyer side, and I put down a larger option, then doesn't that decrease my negotiation tactics later? Because then they'll be like in the multiple offer situation, they'll be like, we'll just go with the backup if you are asking for repairs or something like that.
Is it advantageous to make more of an option fee? Yes, of course it is. Anything that can make it look like you're stronger, you can give this much money to move forward. If you've got cash, if cash is king, that's always a good thing too. Okay. Absolutely, you have to think about all those things like you're thinking, Maggie. That's a fact. Also, this area here was also to include hydrostatic testing. You're going, what the heck is hydrostatic testing? What it is basically having a plumber that comes out and shoots water really strong through the piping to see the strength of it. And the reason they're doing hydrostatic testings is because of certain houses that were, let's see, how were they built in the 50s to mid 70s, they didn't have PVC pipes. They had clay pipes, that sort of thing. And what happens to clay pipes? They deteriorate underground, and all you have basically is your water is going through a hole in the ground, which is not appealing, but that's basically what happens when you use something besides PVC pipes. So it's usually done when foundation damage is suspected and the water pressure is really low. I sold a house that this happened several years ago when I was doing sales, and this particular neighborhood was very hilly, and so they had lots of these problems in there. And it was the same. They were built in I think it was built in the 60s or early 70s or something, and it had this kind of piping. And so luckily the sellers owned it outright, and so they just had they agreed to have $30,000 to redo the piping from their house to the street. And then they agreed to do that because that's the only way they were going to sell it. And it was the most adorable little retro looking house. They did a great job, but then it still bit them at the end when it came to the not having the right piping. So that's what happens when they deteriorate. Okay. Seller's disclosure notice. Okay. Seller's disclosure notice is very, very important, as you might think. It's not important to title. Title doesn't care if you didn't do a seller's disclosure. That's not part of their job. But I've had to go and explain to them a time or two that I understand that title, you don't need this, but I'm your client, and I, as the agent, and I need this. So if you don't get it for me, I might not be your client. Sometimes you have to get, say, if you don't have that firm understanding of each other, you have to explain it to them. So either buyer has received the notice, and let me tell you this, if somebody says, okay, I've got the seller's disclosure, just go on the MLS, it's under documents and retrieve it. Well, why would you do that? You're doing their job. You're taking an out from your client by going and doing their job just because they posted it up there. Yes, they posted it up there where you can look at it, but that's not delivery. So if they didn't give you the seller's disclosure within so many days in the second part of B, within so many days. Typically, I would say they should be able to give it to you within 3 days or 4 days. It shouldn't take them that long because they should have already had it pulled together. If seller delivers the notice, buyer may terminate this contract for any reason within 7 days after buyer receives the notice or prior to closing, whichever first occurs, and the earnest money will be refunded to buyer if they see something in there that they didn't like. So that's an out for the buyers right there. Or 3, the seller is not required to furnish the notice under the Texas Property Code. There are certain situations where sellers don't have to use one. And these are listed in the 3rd bullet point. Who's not required to furnish a seller's disclosure? Foreclosures, bankruptcies, lien holders, a lender through foreclosure, guardianship, from one co-owner to another co-owner, from spouse to a child, grandparent, etc., through divorce, or to or from any government entity. A new home, of course, won't have one. And where the value of the dwelling doesn't exceed 5% of the value of the property, basically it's a tear down. So those are the ones that don't have to furnish one. So people who are in a trust or in, yes, go ahead.
Posting it on the multiple listing wouldn't be considered delivery?
No. That's not delivery. When you posted it, did you have a contract?
No.
Right. So after you have a contract, that's when they're supposed to deliver it within so many days. If you don't, if you were to tell somebody, just get it off of there, that's not you delivering it. I would say, if somebody told me that, I would say, you know, I could do that, but according to the contract, you're supposed to deliver it within so many days, so I'll be looking for it in my inbox. Okay? So just know that that's not delivery. What you're doing is taking it out from your client by doing the job for the other agent.
In this like really like high sellers market, is that would that be cause for the seller's agent to just say, you know, this is a complicated buyer situation, so we'll just go with someone else? Or is it still wise to let them deliver it?
Because until you have a contract, you're just having a conversation. After you have a contract, you don't have to worry about that, do you?
And then also, like whatever they post on MLS, it could be changed within, like the sellers might update the seller's disclosure. Is that correct?
You hope so. You hope they've done it if you represent the sellers. You hope they've done it, because what you're going to do is you're going to they have to sign. They don't have to. They're supposed to sign it, and then the buyers are supposed to sign it, agreeing that they saw it. Okay. Who else had a question?
This is Cindy. If I'm the buyer's agent and I'd like to see the disclosure before.
Then you go on the MLS if it's on there and look at it, but that's not delivery.
Okay, and if it's not on there, can you reach out to the listing agent and say, you know, I have some interested buyers they'd like to see?
Absolutely.
Okay. See, I used to practice in DC, and people always put the disclosure on the MLS usually.
And they do that here too, Cindy.
Oh, okay.
But your job is to protect your client. So if they say that's delivery, that is not delivery. Okay. Okay. And there's 3 choices here. Like I said, buyer has received it, buyer hasn't received it, or buyer's not going to get it. So those are the reasons that they may not be required to furnish one that's listed on there as well. An unrepresented seller which would be like a FSBO, is still required to furnish the seller's disclosure on a single family home or condo. If it's a duplex, they're not required to do one. It would be smart to do one, but it's not required to do one on a duplex. So I heard somebody speak up.
Oh, that was me. If I'm like in a hurry and I don't see I'm representing the buyer, I don't, well, you want delivery of the disclosure, and I put buyer has not received notice, I select option 2 and, you know, put 3 days on there.
Yeah.
And I can just fill that in as standard. But like sometimes you don't know if it's a divorce or whatever. So you can just put that on.
Not your problem. You're putting the deadline. It's their problem to get it to you.
Okay. And if they don't have it, they could just let you know.
Yes.
So you're saying the seller would or the listing agent would just simply need to email you a physical copy of the disclosure.
Of course.
Okay.
Yeah, I was more saying if, you know.
Okay, guys, I want to hear from everybody, and I'm hearing from 3 people, and I want to know that everybody else is awake in there. So I would like to hear from other people. Not that they're going to learn a lot from you, Cindy and Joe and everybody else, but I want everybody to have a chance here and not just 3 people. Okay.
Yeah, and I watched your video on Sunday to prep for this. So
oh, you did. Okay.
this is my second round, and I saved my question. So
you were prepared then, Cindy. Good for you. And you know what, you can always call me too, guys. I'm pretty much, I answer calls on weekends, holidays. I have since I've been doing this job. Up until like 9 o'clock. Let's get real. You know, plan ahead of time so you don't call after 9 if possible. I like to shut it down and not think about real estate from then on so I can sleep. But if you're in a bind, always call me or your broker, Gene Grubb. But call me first if you can. Okay? Because I'm here for you, I promise. So we already went over that, things to say. If you represent a seller, always use Seller Shield, the dashboard there, for them to fill out their seller's disclosure. And the reason is because last year in Dallas, there was a lawsuit on a $1.5 million property is all, but still it's $1.5 million, where it had some flooding. And while they disclosed that the flooding had occurred and it was been remediated and been fixed, they did not give the additional document that was required to give to a buyer. And so consequently, they went to court over not getting that form. And so when you use Seller Shield, the dashboard, and this is created by our attorneys that represent Keller Williams. So they have this dashboard they created where the sellers can go on and fill out the seller's disclosure. They have a choice between the TREC seller disclosure or the Texas Realtors seller's disclosure. We didn't put the Austin Board of Realtors one on there. It's like 10 or 12 pages. It's long. But if they do those 2, the TREC one is the one that's the minimum required data to disclose. And if you click on the thing that says there was some flooding on the property, it's going to automatically tag that other additional document that you need and attach it to that for you to sign and fill out as well. And the same thing about if you click on that it has a septic, they're going to attach that septic paperwork as well. So just know that it's important to do that. And also it's important, it doesn't cost your sellers anything to use this format to do their seller's disclosure. It doesn't cost you anything unless you want to pay $10 for your pretty little picture to be on the email that goes to them. It's free. It's a free service. It does tell the sellers that they can buy protection up from 1 to, I think, 3 or 4 years after they've sold their house if something comes up from something that was on their seller's disclosure. And it gives them something like $20,000 worth of legal costs or something. It's $199 to like $399, and they can pay for it then up front or they can pay for it at closing. It's a good deal. It's really a good deal. So why we want you to use this is if they were to find later on, oh, shut up, Alexa. If something shows up down the line and they find out that they could have had this service for a small amount of like $200 to $400, and you did not give them that opportunity, who are they going to be mad at? They're going to be mad at you. Because if they find out that they could have had that and you didn't provide it, so we tell everybody, do it on this document on the Seller Shield only. Then what you would do is once they filled it out, it sends an email with a link for them to choose whichever one seller's disclosure they want. And then they click on the computer and fill it out. And then it sends it back to your dashboard, agent dashboard. So then you would have to just download it and then put it in a command in your opportunity. Okay?
Alice?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
So Hi. If the seller wants to revise the SD, do we just update, give them the SD for revision, or we do amendment?
If they're going to revise their seller's disclosure?
Yes.
I'm sorry?
Yes, if they want to revise their
They
seller
can,
disclosure.
they can go back online and revise that on the seller's disclosure page. Or there is that other option, which I don't think I would do that if it's seller's shield. You want to have those, everything connected together. So I would send them back to seller's shield, and then you're going to have to notify anybody that is involved in that transaction that it's been revised.
So on the ML system, do we keep the original SD and then attach the revised SD, or we just delete the?
I would replace it. If you're not in the middle of a transaction, replace it.
Okay.
And then if you're in the middle of a transaction, you need to let them know that something changed. They remembered something and they changed this, because everybody needs to know up front if you change something. Okay.
Right. But if we are not in the middle of the transaction, we just replace it.
Replace it.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so that's that. Let's see. We've got a lot to cover and we've got a short amount of time. Let's go on. Acceptance of property condition. That's where it's talking as is, means, like I said, everything is as is unless you pay for an option period. Okay. So what you're going to do, you're going to see here, you've got two choices. Buyer accepts the property as is, or buyer accepts the property as is, provided seller at seller's expense shall complete the following specific repairs and treatments. Typically what you see is number one checked. It's as is, but I'm going to pay for an option that we can negotiate repairs down the line. Because what happens if you put something in 2 there, in D2, seller shall do something or other. What is the seller going to do? He's going to look at the number that you're offering, and then he's going to figure out how much that's going to cost right up front, and then he's going to adjust his counter or whatever, his acceptance, according to what you're asking for up front. What I do is I always select as is, and then I make sure that my clients have an option period, and then I let them know that this isn't for little switch plates missing or anything like that. This is for big ticket items that's going to bite them, and I don't negotiate repairs up front. I'm negotiating price, trying to get my foot in the door and my client to get this property. Okay. Okay. Move on to the next one. Now, lender required repairs and treatments. Those are something that, if it's required by the lender to do, it's the buyer may terminate the contract and the earnest money will be refunded to buyer if the treatments and repairs exceeds 5% of the sales price, or they can stay in it, and it's just depending, but these are lender required. These are no ifs, ands, or buts. Okay. And this lender required repairs may show up after your financing period, certainly after your option period. And this is completely different. It's not covered within those 2 time periods. It could be outside of those times. Completion of repairs and treatments. It says, unless agreed in writing otherwise, seller shall complete all agreed repairs prior to closing date. You want to see what they've done, or if you've negotiated a dollar amount that you're going to have them done yourself or something. But just know that typically you want to have it done before you close, of course, because once you close, it's yours. So that's that. Let's see what else. Okay, so what you want to do is you want to make sure that anybody that's doing repairs is licensed and has some kind of, not insurance, but has some kind of bond or something in case some damage was done or something. We had a situation where an agent in one market center decided to save his people some money, and so he got this guy who really worked for this great window company, but he just did this on the side out of his back of his truck. So is there any warranty in that? No, not a bit. So what happened was we said, we're not going to accept that. We want windows replaced in these particular windows done by someone that's authorized and has a warranty for those windows. because our client, if something went wrong, wouldn't be able to find this guy if something happened to the windows that he put in. So you want to make sure that they're licensed and bonded and are professionals. Do you want your neighbor across the street coming in and putting in a light fixture that maybe he didn't put the light wires in totally right, and your house is going to potentially burn down? No, you do not want that. I will barely let David here put in lights because he knows what he's doing for that, but most people do not necessarily know that. You don't want to take a chance on your house burning down because you did something, you tried to do it the cheap way, get a friend to it. Okay, what's next? Environmental matters. It just has to do with like when that little salamander in some little area and they couldn't build there, and so it's just saying about those kind of things. If that's something that